The Nintendo Entertainment System was released in the US in October of 1985, and it took the country by storm with the help of games like Excitebike, Duck Hunt, and Super Mario Bros., and by the end of 1991, there were almost a total of 30 million systems sold. It was wild. There were so many other amazing games coming out for the NES before and after the release of 1990's Super Nintendo that I imagine it was harder to keep up with the new releases having to compete with the newer system. Depending on how you look at it, I guess I could say I was fortunate not to have a SNES when it was released because my dad was still buying me NES games, allowing me to better check out libraries of some of the lesser known games at the time. In a way, I was really lucky to have such a large library of NES games in the 90s, but still, I would have loved having a Super Nintendo as a kid. In today's video, I'm going to do something a little bit different. You might know my channel mostly for covering indie games and mods for other games, but something I've always wanted to do was also to cover older games. This includes games that maybe I haven't heard of yet and only recently played, but it also includes some of the games that I grew up with. 1993's Kirby's Adventure is one of those games I loved playing as a kid and have always wanted to talk about on my channel. There will be gameplay spoilers, plus this video will have some minor flashing imagery, so take caution if you experience issues with photosensitivity. But with all that being said, hi, my name is 10, and welcome to the letter 10. Let's go. I remember fondly playing and beating the first Kirby game, Kirby's Dream Land for Game Boy, on my 9th birthday, and I instantly fell in love with the characters in the world of Dreamland. Always going back to the game's easy to navigate platforming world, fun bosses, and the amazing soundtrack. Heck, the Game Boy game is very likely responsible for my entire love and respect for video game music. So, you can imagine my excitement when I read an issue of Nintendo Power that featured the first 4 stages in its pages of Kirby's Adventure. Kirby's Adventure was released in May of 1993, but I didn't get this game until November of that year as I was living in Germany at the time and my dad claimed it was a hard game to find. But once I got my hands on it, it was all I wanted to play. Sure, I had other games that I loved and played a lot, like Super Mario Bros. 3 or the first Final Fantasy, but Kirby had his grip on my mind through and through, especially very recently, which has motivated me to do this video. When it came to designing Kirby's Adventure, Kirby's creator and well-known game designer Masahiro Sakurai decided to make some significant gameplay alterations when compared to the original Game Boy title. The first thing that he wanted to do when designing the game is that he thought the game would have been better suited for the much newer Super Nintendo system. However, due to pressure from the executives at the time, the decision was quickly made to create a Kirby game for the aging NES. In order to get a game out sooner, as the design team did not have the time to both learn the tools and create a game from scratch for the SNES. With now deciding to create a game for the NES, Sakurai still wanted to design a game that both beginners and veterans would enjoy, but to satisfy them, he came up with the idea of the copy ability. The copy ability allows Kirby to inhale certain powerful enemies, and then by pressing down on the D-pad after inhaling, the player will now have the same ability to use on the environment and other enemies. This gameplay concept of copying has since become a staple in all mainline Kirby games since then. Despite having this copy ability at the player's disposal, the game was still designed to be beaten without using it. This is also similar to changes that were made to Kirby's Flight from Dreamland. In fact, Sakurai had originally thought about removing the ability of Flight altogether, but ultimately left it in, albeit making a tweak to the flight speed while in use. This can also be used to the player's advantage as most of the game's dangerous situations can be avoided with Flight. As you make your way through all 7 playable levels in this game, you'll start off in the first stage of Vegetable Valley. You'll be given your first opportunity to copy a Waddle Doo, a now iconic enemy, and take its beam ability, allowing you to lay waste to the other enemies that get in your way. The wonderful thing about this game is that if you ever get tired of your copied power, or you lose it for some reason, there are always more opportunities to gain new ones as you continue your journey. Once you clear a stage, you'll be given a bonus mini-game where you have to time the press of the A button on your controller, and the better you do, the more points you'll earn, and if you get all the way up to the top, you'll be rewarded with an extra life instead. After you clear all the regular stages in a level, you'll be left with a boss door. For example, the first boss fight in Kirby's Adventure is the same one you encountered back in Kirby's Dream Land, known as Wispy Woods. Once you've beaten a boss, you'll grab a Star Rod piece, and then you'll be on your way to the next level. As you enter the second level, known as Ice Cream Island, you'll end up in a tropical area filled with ocean water, coconut trees, and lots of caves. I probably spent more time with the sword ability than anything else in this game because it's one of the few powers that can actually be used underwater. Most abilities are rendered useless in water, and your ability to suck in enemies will be replaced with a water squirt that Kirby can do with his mouth. It can be a bit frustrating at times, but I believe it adds a reasonable level of balance to the game. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the boss fights. The boss fights in this game aren't too terribly challenging, but if you haven't played many games like this, some of the later bosses, such as Mr. Shine and Mr. Bright and Meta Knight, might give you a little difficulty your first time with them. Before I even recorded footage for this video, I made sure to go through the game several times and even did the boss rush that you unlock after beating the final boss. Some of the bosses like Wispy Woods, Kracko, and King Dedede all make reappearances from Kirby's Dream Land, and aside from Wispy Woods, these revisited bosses do have different boss patterns than the Game Boy title. While I avoided death with most of the bosses in one run, I did struggle a little bit with Meta Knight and the second form of the final boss, Nightmare, but let me tell you, these boss fights are really fun, and they get even more fun in the boss rush mode. If you start to get tired of the stages in each level and don't feel like doing boss rush, there are 3 one-button mini-games in Kirby's Adventure. There is Crane Fever, where you have to grab 2 different types of Kirbys. The little one is worth 1 life each, and the large ones are worth 2. Then there is Egg Catcher, where you have to open your mouth and catch as many eggs as possible, but be careful because Dedede also throws bombs. If you succeed in catching all the eggs, you'll be rewarded with 3 lives. Finally, there is the game simply called Quick Draw, where the fastest gun wins. This game is more time skill based, where you must press the A button on draw before your enemy does. I've only ever cleared this once in my life. This game has its fair share of secrets, including finding hidden switches to unlock bonus stage doors in the level maps. Most of these switches are well hidden behind secret doors, finding the right power up to break a barrier, or even with the use of a cannon to shoot you off to another screen. Another cool little secret of sorts is if you inhale 2 special enemies at the same time. Now I'm talking about enemies with abilities that can be copied. It will go into a mix mode and you'll get a random power up. I say random, but I don't know how random it actually is because I've seen some speedrunners manipulate the RNG to get the same ability over and over again. So there might be some skill and timing there. Also, I've mentioned 2 of the level tiles already, Vegetable Valley and Ice Cream Island. But if you play all 7 levels and look at each letter of every level, you'll notice the letters are V, I, B, G, Y, and O, and R. And if you put them backwards, you'll get Roy G. Biv, the main colors of the rainbow. I thought that was a neat little fact when I found out about it. This game is so well designed. Sakurai's vision of making it a game good enough for beginners but also challenging enough for veterans really paid off. This game left such a positive impression with Nintendo that the game was eventually remade in 2002 for Game Boy Advance as Kirby, Nightmare, and Dreamland. And aside from a new engine, graphics, sound, and music, the game is relatively untouched, except for some new mini-games and a new Meta Knight mode. I haven't played a ton of it prior to making this video, but I think I actually prefer the new version. Don't get me wrong, I love Kirby's Adventure, but I think it's fair for one to recognize its flaws despite loving the game, you know? I will still play the original because it's what I grew up with, but if given the choice between the 2, I'd probably play the remake. Sadly, the only official ways of playing the remake are either on the Game Boy Advance or if you've downloaded the Virtual Console version for Wii U. I would love to see Nintendo re-release it again in the future. Since its release nearly 31 years ago, Kirby's Adventure has always had a special place in my heart. I've played it as a kid, as a teenager, and even playing it as an adult. It has a special charm to it. I don't know where my interest in gaming would be if it wasn't for the world of Kirby, but I can say for sure that my life has been dramatically improved every time I've taken a stroll to Dreamland. I've probably played only 6 or 7 of the games in the series, and I regret I haven't played more of them. But I plan on changing that. If you haven't had a chance to play Kirby's Adventure, there are a few official ways to do so. The first that comes to mind is on Nintendo Switch Online. Well, for however long Nintendo keeps that service up. You can also track down a copy for NES and get some hardware to play it on. I also believe that the game is available to play on the NES Mini, but again, you'll have to track down one down to play it. Regardless of how you play the game, I'm sure you'll have just as much fun as I did playing this game. It will always have a timeless charm that will even make the grumpiest of all people smile. At least, that's what I want to believe. That's the end of my little retrospective for Kirby's Adventure. Now, I'm going to take a break for a few days before I work on the next video, but goodness, I have had tons of fun revisiting this game and even more fun working on this video. I'm always curious to know what everyone's favorite NES game was, so if you liked this video and would like to see more stuff from where I cover older games, leave a comment. Also, if you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more in the future. I want to thank you so much for watching. It's been a pleasure doing this video for y'all, and I look forward to see what's next. Have a beautiful, wonderful day. See you later. Bye.